Hey guys, Bike here, and I'm back again with another Last Epoch build guide video. This one is for the Paladin. So last week I made a Firebase Smite Paladin build and pushed it pretty far. It was pretty successful. We pushed it to 1,143 corruption, and honestly probably could have kept going. But I decided, that's just it's far enough, right? So I decided to do a lightning version because lightning looks very aesthetically pleasing and it already hits different enemies. And I took it in a little bit of a different direction. But before we get into all of that, thank you so much for being here. If you don't mind, drop a like and possibly subscribe if you like this content. Also, in the description, there is a planner to the build along with a loot filter. So if you're just here for the good stuff, it's all right there. Thank you so much for clicking on the video. I appreciate it. So let's dive into the build. I should also mention the gameplay that you are watching is at 800 corruption. If you want to just see a dedicated gameplay video with bosses and all that without me yapping, there will be a description. There will be a link in the description down below. So let's continue. So I started with this build. I referenced Dread's build guide that he did in Cycle 1.0 for Electrify Healing Hands. I used it for a little bit. I ultimately didn't really like it that much. For me personally, it's solid, but I wanted to go in a different direction. But nonetheless, since I referenced Dread's work and he's an awesome content creator, there's a link to that build guide in the description down below. It still holds up, even though it was for Cycle 1.0. It still holds up, but ultimately I did not go in that direction. But if you like dots, that's a build guide for you. So with this build, I ultimately settled on trying to get more crits out of it. As you can tell in the gameplay, I'm critting a lot more than I was for Machine Gun Smite. And the reason why is I actually built some crit into my gear, and I am using a catalyst with base critical strike chance. Yeah, base crit. Built into the catalyst, so it's kind of juicing up the crits. The thing is, because we're trying to build into a little bit more damage, we're giving up some defenses, so that's why I push this to 800 corruption. It does a lot of damage. In fact, I'm pretty sure it does more damage than Machine Gun Smite was doing, but it also has trouble taking some hits. So it can clear monoliths pretty well. The mobility is pretty nice. We're using Healing Hands as a traversal skill. I got that one from Dread. Thank you, Dread. And ultimately, it feels good. The thing is, Smite requires a target, so you have to be able to see the enemy. You can't really off-screen too well. Though I will say this, Lightning Smite does target a lot more enemies. I feel like this build is pretty good for just clearing through monos. It actually does pretty decent against bosses as well. And speaking of bosses, this is at 800 corruption. My favorite boss, the one I've used for every build, Raye. He, as you can see right now, is getting shredded. The thing is, unlike Machine Gun Smite, where I had, the Bastion of Honor and damage reduction, I can't really take a hit too well. Fortunately, I don't get to, display a death screen here. We're able to shred through him. A good offense is a great defense, right? But I won't be able to tank this guy all that much. We could still take a hit or two, but I'm not going to be able to just stand there and face tank the entire fight. And let's move on to the harbinger of this fight. Same story. I can face tank some of his hits, but for the most part, we're just shredding through him and trying not to get one shot. I think the build is pretty safe from one-shot potential, but it's not safe from taking a heavy hit, getting stunned, and then getting wrecked. That is a potential of this build for sure. So last but not least, let's talk about Aberoth. Here he is. Yep. We shred through Aberoth pretty well. We can actually face tank a good amount of Aberoth's attacks. Almost feels like Aberoth's been kind of power crept, and that's not really Aberoth's fault. That's the fact that we've had a cycle that's lasted, this many months, and we got a few more months to go. With all that being said, though, guys, thank you so much for being here. Let's jump into the game. As a reminder, if you just want gameplay, there is a dedicated gameplay video, link in the description. Let's get into it. Hey, guys, here we are. In game. All right, I'm going to give you a quick demonstration. It's pretty much very similar to Machine Gun Smite. So we burn down our mana, get it low, and we're using the same little secret tech that we're using with Machine Gun Smite. We're proccing more smites with Healing Hands as a melee attack, and we're using Polaris. So similar gear here. It's not an exact copy paste, and you guys will see why. But as you can tell, it actually does a lot of damage. We're shredding through this guy. So if you see right here, after 1 minute, I was able to take this guy from full health down to about 86% of his health. After 1 minute, timing it, just standing here with a stopwatch on my phone, and I keep looking over whatever. I do it in the live streams. I don't really do it in the recording. I did it a couple times. Each time it came back as 86%. For reference, Machine Gun Smite was a solid 89. So using that as a basis, it does more damage, at least against single target enemies. Doesn't necessarily mean it's more tanky, obviously, but if you wanted a damage comparison, there you go. So that was a quick demonstration. All right, let's talk about the gear. So if you've seen the Machine Gun Smite, you're going to see some familiar pieces. Forgive me, but we'll kind of move through this at a good rate. So we're using Peak of the Mountain here for the critical strike chance. We're not leeching, so that's fine. So because we're healing with Healing Hands, so who cares if we can't leech from critical strikes? You can throw essentially whatever you want on here. The +2 to Healing Hands is fine. I believe that's a tier. Yeah, that is a tier 5. It's the only way to get a tier 5. So +2 to Healing Hands, armor, and increased health, I think are fine. You can go health. The armor is actually not too bad. It kind of helps a little bit because in the Machine Gun Smite build, I was using Leonines, and that gives so much armor and critical strike reduction. So going down to a Peak of the Mountain, which only has 40 armor compared to 550, yeah, a little percentage goes a long way, but still, well, our armor is substantially lower than it was in Machine Gun Smite. You'll kind of notice that. It's kind of a theme here in terms of the way the build is going. More damage, less defensive. Moving on. So here we are with Polaris. Same exact sword I used in the last one. So we do have some okay strength, 42 strength, so +1 spell damage per 2 strength, I believe. That comes out to 21 extra spell damage to go with the flat spell damage and mana and chance to shred armor that's already on here. And we're using the ultra secret tech of chance to cast Smite on melee hit. Shout out to Kaiserin again. That was your idea, not mine, Kaiserin from the chat. It works pretty well. I don't know if this is intended or if it's an oversight from EHG. Nonetheless, it works. So I'm going to keep using it until they change it, or I don't know, something better comes along, because this works pretty well. All right, moving on from Polaris. So I'm using an Osirion here, and this is actually something that you might be able to use on Machine Gun Smite, but it gives a little bit of damage reduction because it gives you a chance to chill, which is a really nice ailment to put on enemies. It's a slight form of damage reduction in the form of chill. And I'm not talking about the 2% less damage taken from chilled enemies. I'm talking about chill itself. If you didn't know, chill causes enemies to move slower and have a lower attack speed. That in and of itself is a form of damage reduction when they can't attack you as much. That is less damage that can be output in a second. Okay, I know that sounds like kind of patronizing you guys a little bit. Like, all right, everybody, this is the number one. Moving on. So chill in and of itself is a form of damage reduction. On top of that, we actually get less damage taken from chilled enemies. In this case, we got unlucky. 2%. The most you can get is 4% from less damage taken from chilled enemies. On top of that, it gives us a chance to shock, which is really good because we're a lightning build, and shock shreds lightning resistances, so I think that's a great pickup. Increased shock duration, another great pickup, and 1% more damage per stack of shock. Here's the thing, shock stacks up to 10 times. That is 10% more damage that we get from this one ring. On top of it, it gives mana, and I was able to slam a T7 health on here. Even if you just find a regular Osirion, put it in the Nemesis, whatever it gives you is a nice little boost, and use that until you can get whatever affix you need for it. Osirion is a great pickup and a great add to the build, and in fact might be a great add to Machine Gun Smite for a little bit more damage. Right, moving on. Same gloves. Eternal Gauntlets is what you're going to want. Health, mana, and cast speed, all great pickups. If you can, see if you can put Frailty on here. I'm taking the Blessing for Frailty on this build. But yeah, if you can like seal like at least a tier 1 chance to apply Frailty, it can go a long way. And then with that other blessing, instead of with the blessing, we'll go over that in the blessing section. We'll talk about it later. But yeah, see if you can get Frailty on here. So Foot of the Mountain. So we are converting our dodge rating. If we move a little bit, we have some dodge rating. We're converting that into endurance threshold. As you can see, when I stand still, my endurance threshold goes up to 1,130, and when I use volatile reversal, it jumps up to 1,681. This is the same little secret tech we were using in Machine Gun Smite, and I think it's a great pickup. On top of that, you get it. You get endurance. You get plus 11 to all attributes. So 11, 11, 11, 11, 11. That's a lot. That's a lot of all attributes. So 26% endurance, plus 11 to all attributes. Reduces the cost of mana, reduces the mana cost of your spells as you're moving around, and then converting the dodge rating to endurance threshold. Nice pickup. So Foot of the Mountain though really helps if you're using Red Ring, which for this build, I know for Machine Gun Smite, I said you don't need a Red Ring. For this build, Red Ring actually does help a lot. Red Ring does help a lot if you want to push into 800 or even more corruption, because with Machine Gun Smite we were also using a shield. We also had damage reduction on that shield. I said you don't need a Red Ring. The thing is, I didn't really offer a good substitute for Foot of the Mountain. Like, yeah, sure, it gives us our endurance, which goes hand in hand with with devotion. But if you got your endurance taken care of somewhere, like if you're taking endurance in the skill tree, or if you're taking endurance on right here, you can get a good amount of endurance just off of Shelter from the Storm. And on top of it, you can pick up some endurance from Blinding Light. There's ways to pick up endurance, and if you don't need the endurance from Foot of the Mountain, and you're not running Red Ring, and you don't care about all attributes, what would you use instead of Foot of the Mountain? I would probably run Citadel Boots. You could also, I don't know if I would use these, just because they kind of have a kiss curse, but there's a pair of boots, the lightning boots. Maybe you guys know what I'm talking about. Oh, this is something. If I could ever get something with like 4 LP on static shock, it might be funny to use this, but I don't know if I ever would. 11% more damage, lightning damage to shocked enemies. It could be cool, but we need all of these attributes. Nonetheless, I think it'd be kind of funny to use static shock. What were the? Yeah, here we go. Storm Tide. Increased movement speed, chance to shock on lightning hit, increased shock duration. The movement speed's nice. That's 35% movement speed you get because that's a flat 25, and you can get up to 10%. Nonetheless, I don't think I would use these. I mean, for one, you're shocked for 4 seconds when you stop moving. We already have a way to apply shock with Osirion, and I just don't think they're worth it. You could run Blood of the Exile. You know, Blood of the Exile is always a nice pickup. I mean, even if you're not using... So, like, let's say you're using Red Ring, and you don't... And your endurance is taken care of, and you don't want to use the dodge rating converted to endurance, and you don't care about minus mana costs, and you don't need plus 11 to all attributes, or you're already good, right? And you just need 20 attributes. Blood of the Exile is a great pickup here. You get more movement speed, and then you can slam it with T7 movement speed. Yeah, you can get around. But for the most part, what I would recommend is good old Citadel boost. Not necessarily these ones, but 185 armor, a little bit more reduced bonus damage taken from critical strikes. That's great. All right, I spent way too much time talking about boots. Way too much time. So let's bring it on back down to earth. So we talked about Red Ring. Red Ring I do recommend for the build. It gives us resistances. If you have all attributes, the thing is what you're looking for. In case you didn't see Machine Gun Smite and you've never heard of Red Ring before, maybe you're a newer player. If you are a newer player and you're looking for a build, sorry, this might not be a build for you. This is pretty high end. I will say that this cycle has gone on for so long that builds like this might actually be attainable or common if you've been playing in the cycle long enough. Because after 7 months, yeah, you're going to be finding some good stuff. So yeah, a couple of the builds I'm putting out recently have been, I don't know, Prime, Cadillac even. It's all good. I'm going to be trying to get back into the cycle and doing some more down-to-earth builds at some point. But for right now, I've been doing some pretty prime ones. Nonetheless, if you've never heard of Red Ring and you don't know what it does, essentially you take 10% less damage taken if you have at least 180 attributes. These are the attributes that you're looking for: vitality, strength, dexterity, intelligence, attunement. You need to have at least 180 of these. What's nice is you get plus 4 to all attributes, so 4, 4, 4, 4, 4. If you have Red Ring, you could get lucky and have one that gives plus 5. I didn't get that, but nonetheless, the ring itself will give you 20 or even 25 towards that 180. So I was able to make it up with Peak of the Mountain, which has a range as well. I got a plus 4, so there's another 20. This is 11 to each. This is 55. So 20, 20, 55. That's 95 just from 3 items. 24. 10. Where else are we getting this from? Oh, and then the passive tree. We can go over that. But yeah, we got a lot. We got a lot. Nonetheless, with all of that, you take 10% less damage, and then you get some nice things to have. Red Ring is a great ring. It's good for damage reduction, and it's very rare. It's not very common to find these guys, but especially if you've been playing the cycle this long, and you've been playing a couple hours a week, you might have come across the Red Ring. You might have all this gear just laying around if you've been playing Sentinel. Nonetheless, I recommend Red Ring. Moving on. Sorry, I'm rambling here. We're almost through the gear section. So we got the belt, Praetorian belt. You want cleanse on your belt. So here's what a good belt would look like. You're gonna want Praetorian belt. You're gonna want lightning damage. You're gonna want cleanse that's sealed on there. On top of that, mana regen. It's not too bad. Mana regen's not too bad. You can take whatever you're looking for on there. Get lightning damage. Get cleanse. Get yourself either T7 health or T7 hybrid health, and then percent health or hybrid health as your tier 5 affix. And there you go. Get you some health. That's a great belt. Okay, Champion Regalia. This is also another form of armor mitigation that's applying to dots. The other one is Eternal Gauntlets. So we got mana, attunement, health, and health. I highly recommend attunement. But if you are set and you don't need 24 attunement for Red Ring, you could actually take like percent mana, like a T7% mana could work in this situation. Let me do some quick math here. Let me do some quick math. Last time I did some math here, it looked like we were pretty much set on the ability scores. Hold on. Yeah, we're at 184. So sadly, I need Champion Regalia. But if you're good, like you're able to get the attribute scores elsewhere, you can just put mana, health. Or if you're really chugging, you can go percent health, like a T7% health, flat health, mana. Nonetheless, it's for the Red Ring. If you're not using Red Ring, I would go mana. All right, moving on. So we're using a Crystal Skull. We got 14 intelligence from this bad boy. I was able to put mana, some critical strike multiplier, necrotic resistance, whatever. I didn't really need it, but cool, thanks. Chance to shock attackers, and what I really needed, the 32% increased cast speed. This is a T7. It goes up to 35%. 32 is just fine. And what I really needed was the cast speed, and what I really needed was the flat spell critical strike chance. So right now, as it stands, I have, you guys can't see this, I have 68% chance to crit, and when I use Holy Aura, like as an active, it goes up to 72% for a little bit. So we're critting pretty well. We're critting more than 2/3 of the time. And that's all thanks to Crystal Skull. I'm going to take this off. You guys can't see it because my face is in the way. Our crit goes down to 31. Very important. All right, Devotion. Make sure we cover this. So we're getting some more value out of Devotion now as opposed to Machine Gun Smite because we're actually using Lightning. So we're benefiting from the Lightning Pin. We're benefiting from the increased lightning damage. We're benefiting from increased healing effectiveness. We're benefiting from the endurance. And on top of that, the more mana that we burn down, the more effectiveness we get. So the increased cast speed, it's whatever. It doesn't matter how much mana you have. It goes off the percentage. I could have 100 mana and I would still get the same amount of cast speed out of this as I would 1,000 mana because it goes off a percentage, not how much actual mana you have. But the spell damage, well, with the more mana you have, the more spell damage you'll have for Smite. Of course, you have to burn it down. That's the way it works. In case you didn't know, you didn't see the last build, and you've never played a Smite build before, here's our mana right here. And when we burn it down, right? When we burn it down, now we're getting effects based off how much missing mana we have. So the cast speed is based off of percentage. It doesn't matter how much we have, as explained earlier. The flat spell damage, though, will be based off of 5 missing mana. So each 5 missing mana right here, we get +1 spell damage. So the more mana you have, and you have it burned down in that moment, the more actual damage you'll have for Smite. Cool. And I think we covered all the pieces of the gear. So let's move on to the idols. I gotta take a drink real quick. Alright, we're gonna keep this brief. So we're not using shield, so these block effect, yeah, I don't really have any good secondary affects for these idols. So right here, you're going to want increased damage with Smite, and then go with something like health. Or shred armor on melee hits, kind of cheeky, you know, because we turn healing hands into a melee hit. So you can use that as well if you don't have armor shred on Polaris. But what I would go for is Smite and health. I haven't found any of those. But yeah, Smite and health, Smite and health, Smite and health. We're not going to need the block effect in this because we're not using a shield. And then for the other ones, I just use these idols right here to shore up any weaknesses. As you can tell, I'm pretty much right there with my physical resistance and my cold resistance. That's what I was lacking. Yeah, just get these idols and then put whatever else you need in there. If you're good off your resistances, health idols, you know, health, the vigorous stout idols, get those. All right, moving on to the blessings. So follow the outcast. This character is level 100 and I'm not hurting for favor, so I'm taking increased gold drop rate. I'm pretty much moving away from the unique drop rates. Those are okay, but right now I need gold. I mean, I got 9 million gold right now. I got 10 million gold, but the stash tabs can be expensive. But again, take whatever you want. If you're farming favor, take the experience gain. So the Stolen Lance timeline, I would recommend the increased ring drop rate. You know, maybe get a red ring, might help. Blood Frost and Death, increased one-handed sword. It'll help with finding a Polaris. So yeah, obviously take what you want. Prefix shard drop rate, you know, take what you want. And Last Ruin class specific shard drop rate. Take what you want. All right, let's talk about the good stuff. So the blessings are going to be very similar to what we had in Machine Gun Smite. So the Black Sun timeline, critical strike multiplier, and in the Storm, mana helps a lot. Reign of Dragons, though, this is a little bit different. So we are running critical strike avoidance. I didn't want to try, since I'm not running Leonines. And I'm not running Citadel boots. And I'm not going to be trying to base all of my critical strike avoidance off of blind, even though that's good. Don't get me wrong, that's good. I went with the old school critical strike avoidance. Especially considering that Paladin is very good. It's Paladin specific. Well, I'm sure there's other classes, but of the 3 masteries, Paladin, it's extremely easy if you have the 70% blessing to dip 6 points into faith armor, get some increased armor, and 30% critical strike avoidance. You don't have to put it on your ring or your boots or your belt or your helmet. You get it right there in the skill tree. You take the 70% critical strike avoidance blessing and you are off to the races. If you are not going a crit route, or your critical strike avoidance is taken care of, or you have reduced bonus damage taken, take resist all. Spirits of Fire. This is what I was talking about earlier. If you have chance to apply frailty on your gear, like your relic. Oh, speaking of relics, did we talk about Twisted Heart of Ukeros? Yeah. Yeah, I'm sorry about that, guys. Let's bring it back real quick. I kind of, if you saw Machine Gun Smite, you know how this works. But Twist Art of Icaros, 8% of current health converted to ward when you directly cast an elemental spell. +1 to elemental spells. +10 strength. +12 cast speed. And we slammed it with +3 smite. +3 to smite, increased spell damage, and increased health on the implicit. And this is how we're getting our ward. That's how we're generating our ward. I kind of took this for granted. I guess I'm somewhat assuming that everybody's at least seen a piece of Machine Gun Smite. Okay, cool. So let's talk about this. So if you're able to get frailty on your gear, take armor. But if you're like me and you don't have frailty on your gear, take chance to apply frailty on hit. This is a great form of damage reduction. Stacks up to 3 times. Enemies that have frailty on them deal 6% less damage per stack. 3 times, 6 times 3 is 18. That's 18% less damage that they're able to deal. That is a great form of damage reduction. Take it. And Age of Winter, take increased armor. Okay, and that is the blessings. Let's go ahead and talk about the skills. So, Holy Aura, since we're not a fire build, I will admit that some of my skills are not necessarily in the best place. I took Redemption for some extra healing for Healing Hands and Smite. I put 1 point into Ward Regen. Probably because I'm so used to putting 5 points into Shelter from the Storm. With this particular build, it was already set. So I just put 1 point there. 2 points in the Vital Boon, just so we can also get to Redemption and Faith. And 1 point into Purification, +20 to Poison Resistance, and Cleanse Ailments. This is our only source of cleanse. I was telling you guys earlier, make sure you got cleanse on your belt. Well, Paladin has its ways, and it is Holy Aura. Excuse me. All right. 2 points into Rye's Devotion, Ignite Chance, whatever. We're not really using that. We're not taking Burning Blows or Rye's Fury. Excuse me. You just need 2 points to get down into Fanaticism. +9% cast speed. It's very nice. 4 points into True Strike, increased crit chance, and 3 points into Extreme Zeal, critical strike multiplier 15%. Healing Hands. So we're using Healing Hands as a traversal skill. And now here's the thing. When we're attacking like this, Healing Hands is being procced, but since we didn't directly cast Healing Hands, it's not a traversal skill. Right? It's when we directly cast it, and then it goes on cooldown. And if you notice, even though it's on cooldown, we can still proc Healing Hands through Smite. So don't worry about Rye's Chariot messing with your Healing Hands procs. It doesn't interfere with it. As long as you're proccing it through Hands of Aurelis. When you cast Smite, you have a chance to cast Healing Hands around the target location. This consumes 70% of its mana cost. So 4 points into Hands of Aurelis, 1 point into Divine Barrier. We're not using this attunement hack, so to speak. We're not using the Missing Ward affects that you would find on something like your gloves with the experimental affects, or Exsanguinous on your chest, or the Last Steps of the Living on your boots. We're not using any of that. You could, but this is not that type of guide. Nonetheless, we just need that to get down to Prayer of the Fallen for increased healing effectiveness, 100%, and 4 points into Urgent Healing for more upfront healing. +80 is very nice. 1 point into Syrian Light. Now hits enemies within its area of effect, dealing fire spell damage. Cool. 1 point into Bane of Evil. I don't really care too much about that. I'm not trying to do any damage with Healing Hands. What I'm trying to do is grab Halted Scourge and Turn Undead because this is a form of damage reduction. When an enemy has Turn Undead on them, it's an ailment, so to speak, and Halted Scourge, another ailment, we take 10% less damage for them. They have to be a void enemy and undead enemy, respectively. But when we hit them with Healing Hands, we get that 10% less damage taken from them. That's the only reason why I take that. 2 points into Cleric's Wrath because we have to. 1 point into Virtue of Patience. I don't really care about that. We're not trying to do damage. 1 point into Seraph's Blade. Turns this into a melee attack. So you might notice we need a target for Smite, but you might notice when I'm hitting an enemy, it's kind of hard to tell, but you see like this little swooshing thing right there. That's Healing Hands. So when I actually get in close, I'm now having an opportunity to proc this 43% chance to cast more smites because we're hitting them with a melee attack. Even though it's being procced by Smite, Smite is proccing Healing Hands. Healing Hands is a melee attack. The melee attack is hitting an enemy. It has a 43% chance to cast Smite on melee hit. It's a chance to get more smites. And since I'm not using Healing Hands for damage, it's pretty effective. It's pretty effective. What came first, the chicken or the egg, right? Alright, moving on from Healing Hands. Let's talk about Smite. So if you're in a good spot, you can actually take some points out of Atonement and put them into Conflagration. I personally didn't like the Seesaw effect, which is I didn't like trying to manage my health. So I put all 5 points into Atonement. So let's break this down real quick. 3 points into Pillars of Light. This is a double cast opportunity. 5 points into Sacrifice. This is 250% more damage. But you now have a health cost, 15% of your current health. Excuse me. Yeah, 15% of your current health per cast is taken away. But you can put points into Atonement to remove some of the health cost. I put all 5 points there so we don't pay any of our health to proc Sacrifice. If you're in a good spot, you can take a couple points out and put it elsewhere for more damage. Just know you'll be losing some of your life when you're casting Sacrifice. I didn't want to have to deal with it. Moving on. We didn't put any points into Conviction because we already had an okay critical strike chance. In Season 2, it's already been teased. They're removing the cast speed debuff for taking points here. Conviction might be a great thing to pick up. 1 point in Season 2, I should say. 1 point into Blinding Flash, just so we can get up here. 2 points into Piety. We're not trying to do Electrify. 1 point into Aura of Lagan. We convert Smite from Fire to Lightning. And then 1 point in Unbalanced Scale. Smite hits cast a lightning bolt at 3 nearby enemies. Costs more mana. It's okay. 3 points in a Holy Fire for 75% Ignite chance, except it gets converted to Electrify with this node. And then 3 points into Conflagration. Obviously, you would want 5 points here, but alas, I don't want to have to deal with the Sacrifice health costs. If you don't mind, take a couple points out, put them here. This goes up to 100% more damage. It's multiplicative with this and this. Check it out. I personally don't like the health costs. Sigils. Since we're not using Sign of Guardian, all right, since we're not trying to do the whole block chance thing, I did put 1 point into Meditation for the health regen. I think that's good right there. I put 5 points for the healing increase, the healing effectiveness. 2 points into Alacrity for that 30% cast speed. So you can tell it really helps burn down our mana in a pinch. If you think your cast speed is already good enough which mine probably is. You can take these 2 points out and put them elsewhere, but I'm just so used to excuse me. I'm just so used to having that amount of cast speed. I just like it there. Plus, it's healing in a can. Four 4 points into empowering sigils. You can take a point out of Word of Alacrity and put it here. And what's going to happen is this will become 25% increased damage per sigil. And with the way we have this set up right now, we're doing four sigils. So 20% per sigil, 4 sigils, that's 80% increased damage. It's not more damage, increased damage. We also gain some fire damage per sigil built into Sigils of Hope. 3 points into Iron Sigils for Endurance Threshold. 4 points in Endurance, Enduring Hope. Sigils last longer. 1 point into Tetragram gives us another sigil because we get 3 sigils by default. You can take Tetragram to get +1. And then 1 point into Meditation for health regen. If you don't need health regen, just take it out. Take it out and put it elsewhere, maybe into Enduring Hope. Let's talk about Volatile Reversal. So if you saw Machine Gun Smite, you can skip this part. It's the same exact setup. Points into Traveler's Fatigue and Time Lost Wisdom, getting that cooldown reduction, Time Sap, into Time Lost Vitality, cooldown reduction, all that good stuff. Instead of putting 3 points into Catching Up, which is what I normally do, I put 3 points into Phased Reality. It gives us 360 dodge rating while Volatile Reversal is on cooldown. And if you're keeping your feet planted, you now convert all of that into Endurance Threshold. Makes this a little bit tankier. So 1 point into Incipient Void Rift, 1 point into Terminal Void Rift, 3 points into Dark Expanse, and 3 points into Harbinger of Dust. Enemies take more damage per Void Rift that they've been hit by. You can have 2 Void Rifts. So think of it this way. This is like more damage on crack. You're going to calculate all your damage. And then when an enemy is hit by these Void Rifts, they're going to take up to 60% increased damage of what your damage already was. Here's all of your damage. Now increase whatever that final number is by 60%. Yeah, so I guess I'll say this now. I got to start putting this into all of the videos. Only because we have a couple months left in the cycle before Season 2 comes out. I'm still cranking out Sentinel videos, but this Volatile Reversal is getting changed. And the amount of damage that we're getting out of Harbinger of Dust, this is going away. Now, what they said is they're going to try and put more damage into the skills themselves. Because right now, if you've played Sentinel without Volatile Reversal, it can feel a little underwhelming at times. I think Smite is still... There's enough more multipliers to where this can still feel pretty good without Volatile Reversal. Obviously, this takes it to the moon. There's going to definitely be some skills that are lacking without it. So hopefully EHG balances the game well, because this has been the one thing that's been keeping Sentinels in the race in terms of being able to push past 700 corruption, being able to just nuke an enemy with Volatile Reversal. So we shall see what's going to happen. But yeah, this build will definitely be getting changed up in Season 2. And I will be revisiting my builds in Season 2. It's just great content to fall back on. So all that being said, let's move on. Let's go to the passive tree. And then that'll be it. Passive tree and we're out. Let's try and get through this. 8 points into Juggernaut for Strength, Fire, and Void Resistance. 4 points into Fearless for Vitality. 5 points into Armor Clad. This is our only source of damage reduction not on our gear. Hopefully, we get more sources of damage reduction in Season 2 with the Sentinel mini rework. 5 points into cooldown speed for our movement skills plus 30 health as well. Cooldown would include healing hands because it's now a movement, and volatile reversal is also considered a movement skill. 30% cooldown. Get it? Time and Faith. So this generates health and mana when you use Rive, Vengeance, Smite, or Multi-Strike. We're obviously using Smite. I really like Time and Faith for the health gain. The mana gain, obviously we're trying to keep our mana low. Put as many points as you want into here for it to feel good. If 0 is the question, is the answer, then put 0 in here. For me, 3 points was it. 5 points into Blade Master. Blade Master. You have increased attack and cast speed while using a sword or axe. 30% cast speed with the sword is what we get with Polaris. All right. 0 points into Forge Guard, 10 points into Void Knight. I'd even spend the 1 point on Void Corruption. I'd even spend that 1 point there. We could, but I decided to just grab 10 points and get out. All right. The rest is all in the Paladin tree. So 8 points into Conviction. For we're doing it for the lightning damage and then the lightning pin. Very nice. 5 points into Defiance. Also gives us attunement and elemental resistance. 10 points into Valor for health and healing effectiveness. 5 points into Holy Icon for healing effectiveness and necrotic resistance and health. 6 points into Faith Armor for critical strike avoidance and the armor. 10 points into Holy Precision for increased spell critical strike chance and 100% critical strike multiplier with lightning skills. 5 points into Prayer Aegis for endurance threshold and additional health. Reverence of Duality, 24% increased health, 24% increased damage, 24% increased healing effectiveness, 24% increased mana. 12 points in the Light of Ra'ye, increased fire damage, increased lightning damage, and move speed. Guys, thank you so much for making it to the end of the video. I really appreciate it. I know this is essentially just a, hey, let's crank up the damage and crank down the defense version of the build that I just released a week ago, but I really wanted to check out lightning. It has its place. You can certainly build this more defensively, like the way I had done it with Machine Gun Smite. But Machine Gun Smite, we got to abuse Trinity of Flames and Throne of Ambition, whereas we didn't have that here. So I wanted the build to feel good with some traditional items, and then fall back on Red Rings. You could run 2 Red Rings if you wanted, but I think Osirion is fine. We don't need to be pushing 1,000+ corruption, but if you want to give it a shot, by all means. I love to hear from everybody who tries out my builds and see what they've done with it. Thank you so much for making it to the end of the video, and I'm not going to keep you guys any longer. Like I said, links in the description with the relevant information. Thank you. You guys take care. Peace out.